Whenever you ask someone about where they want to travel, Spain almost always makes the cut. And visiting the country only makes you hungrier to spend time there. You're about to receive firsthand advice, guidance, and recommendations about visiting Spain from three travel lemon creators who have spent collectively over half a decade in the country between them. I'm Sky Ariella, a senior travel writer and video producer at Travel Lemming, and today's host of the Travel Lemming podcast. And Spain was one of the very first places that I ever extensively traveled in Europe. On my first trip, I did a multi-month road trip across the southern Andalusian region. And then I returned a year later to live in Barcelona and explore Catalonia for a few months. Today, I'm joined by two Travel Lemmings, very talented travel writers, Meera and Catherine. Welcome to the Travel Lemming podcast. Meera, could you introduce yourself and give a brief overview of your time in Spain? And then Catherine, we could do the same with you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk about Spain today because Spain for me was kind of like that shifting point in my head that really sparked the travel journey and urged me to move abroad. And it has always been a place that I've constantly returned to. My first trip to Spain ever was in high school. I did a study abroad program my sophomore year of high school out of nowhere. I just came home one day and told my parents, like, they talked about this in school and I'm going to do it. I just packed up and went and spent some of my sophomore year there attending a high school and living with the family in Valladolid. And it was an incredible experience, complete 180 than, anything I was used to growing up in Delaware. So that also pushed me to then study abroad again in college in Madrid. So this time I spent a semester there. And that was the moment that I was like, all right, I am finishing my degree, I'm graduating, and I'm going. Like, it is a done deal. So in 2019, I graduated, and then I went back and ended up spending 3 years teaching English in Madrid. It was supposed to be kind of a 1-year stint after college just to, take a break, figure out where I was going with it. Ended up being a COVID year. So I was like, nope, doing that again, like redo. So then I went on to my second year, and then it ended up being 3 before I left. And yeah, it's just always been a country that has, every time I go back, we'll talk about it later. Like there's something new to see and do there.
Catherine, do you want to share a little bit about your work with Travel Lemming and your experience with Spain?
I'm a senior travel writer with Travel Lemming, and my first visit to Spain was actually in 2017 when I walked the Camino de Santiago, the Camino Frances route. The Camino de Santiago was really life-changing for me because I think without that, I wouldn't have gone on to teach English in Spain for a couple of years. So I went as well in a COVID year. I went to Zaragoza to teach. And 6 months after I arrived, my time was cut short because of the pandemic. So I ended up going home that summer. I stuck it out for a while and it just wasn't fun. So I ended up going home and returning to Madrid a couple of years later to teach. So I've gone back to do it. I've done another Camino. I did a Camino Primitivo about a year and a half ago.
Well, that's awesome. So anyone listening, as you can tell, you're in really good hands. So one of the things that we touched on is that Spain has a wide variety of things to do. I mean, there's beaches, there's lots of nature. Of course, there's the food, lots of cultural experiences, partying if you're into that, but also lots of museums. Personally, when I was in Barcelona, I know that I really loved walking around the architecture with my camera, places like Park Güell, and some like the lower key Catalonia beaches like Calabana and Blanes. Just like kind of wandering around and seeing what the day would get me into. What do you guys think are some of the best things to do in Spain?
For me, I'm a huge art lover. I studied art history in school. So I'm always obsessed with the galleries. Of course, the big ones like the Prado and the Guggenheim in Bilbao are like some absolutely must-dos. But Spain is full of like little art galleries everywhere you go. I think everybody just sticks to the big ones, and the little ones are so rich and offer so much. So I think I'm definitely hitting up all the art galleries. The big ones and the small ones are one of the top things to do in Spain. As well, just seeing a lot of the smaller towns and cities. Like everybody goes and sticks to Madrid and Barcelona and Valencia. But what I've learned not only from walking the Camino, but from also sort of my weekends away while I was teaching is some of the smaller places are so amazing. So I say definitely take as many day trips as you can, put a few of those little smaller towns and cities on your itinerary because they're so rewarding and really get you in touch with authentic Spain. And I think, I'm a little bit biased when it comes to this, but I think definitely walking all or part of a route of a Camino de Santiago is one of the top experiences in the country because you see such a different perspective when you're on foot. So, and just to see like these little tiny villages that you would never even see on a map is It's such a rewarding experience. And every little place has its own culture and its own festivals. So it's really, really a rewarding experience there. If you like walking, I say that's definitely a must do in Spain.
Yeah, that's really special. And how many places can you just be like, I'm going to walk and walk and walk for one place? I guess technically you could do that anywhere, but where it's so organized and like there's people also on the same pilgrimage, it's very unique. Yeah. All right, Meera, what do you think are some of the best things to do in Spain?
Awesome. It was really hard for me to narrow this down to just like, top 3 things to do. For me, I'm like a huge foodie. Me and my partner are both always like we plan our restaurants and our reservations and everything like well before the trip. So I definitely would recommend, no matter what region of the country you're in, to do a food tour where you are, especially if you're up in the north. I know that Kat has a lot more experience with that than I do up there, so I'm going to let her talk about it later. But wow, some of the food tours I've been on through Spain have just been like such fun afternoons. You really get to learn so much about the different regions' food cultures, which are really diverse. Like every region of Spain really has like a completely different food scene. Like there's a lot of overlaps, but then there's so many dishes and drinks that are just so specific to not even like the whole region, but like this tiny town somewhere has, this one dish you won't find the same anywhere else. So I would really recommend looking into your destination within Spain and choosing a great tour there. Some of my favorite weekends have just been, tapas, bar hopping through the neighborhoods and just sitting outside on the patios. And Spain is such a great like patio outdoor culture too, that it's just really lively and you get to meet everyone's chatting and mingling, and it's just a really great community feeling. So that's a number one for me. I'd also say that I would really recommend catching a flamenco show. If you are visiting Sevilla, which is like the heart and soul of flamenco culture, that's an absolute must. But no matter where you are, you probably will find a really good one. And especially if you're traveling through like the southern Andalusia region, I think one of the best shows I ever saw was in Granada. And it was just like mesmerizing. I could not take my eyes off of the dancers. So also an incredible experience. Third thing on my list, and I would not call myself, a huge sports fan, but it is a completely different world in Spain. My first host family in high school is actually who really introduced me to the Spanish football culture. My host dad was a coach and my host little brother was a player. And then in college, my host family were huge Madrid fans, and they lived right near the stadium. So we would always be at all of tailgates outside before the games. It's a party. It's an amazing time. And if you're lucky enough to catch El Clásico, which is the rival match between Madrid and Barcelona, that is like next level experience.
So do you guys have any hidden gem recommendations in Spain that might not pop up on the earlier searches for things to do in Spain?
I think for me, my favorite hidden gems are usually like the little cities that aren't really on the guidebook radar. So I'm obsessed with Cuenca. It's a wonderful day trip from Madrid, but I actually like to spend a couple of days there. It's like this beautiful hilltop city, and this old town is just absolutely spectacular, and the whole surrounding area is absolutely stunning. Oviedo is another place that I love. I went there for the first time during Easter week. I spent Easter week there when I was living in Madrid and just fell in love with it. And it's a starting point of the Camino Primitivo. And it's actually voted the cleanest city in Spain. Many like every year. So that is definitely a hidden gem that I would recommend. And the whole region of Asturias there is really mountainous and really beautiful. So if you like to hike or get out in nature, that's one of the best places in Spain, I think, to go. And Salamanca is also a place I really fell in love with. It's a big university city. It does make the list for sure, but I didn't find it to be super touristy. The buildings are so beautiful. The architecture is absolutely incredible in Salamanca. And I think that's also a great day trip from Madrid as well. But I also think that's one that deserves a couple of days. So don't just make a bunch of day trips either. Make sure to spend a couple of days in all of these little places. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, we were talking about a little bit before how there's a few destinations like Barcelona, Madrid. Obviously, those are like the first things people think about when they're thinking Spain. But there really are all these little tiny places that even between people who have been to Spain before, you'll mention them. They're like, didn't know that place existed at all. When I was in the Andalusian region, I went to this one little town called Figliana, and it was just up in the mountains, had the most insane views of the ocean and everything. Very quiet, not much going on, but like you didn't even really need anything going on because the views were so insane. And then another one that might be a little more known, but is still obviously not as big as Barcelona or Madrid, was one called Ronda. That was also out in the mountains, kind of a hassle to get to, but just so gorgeous. And even just walking around I was thoroughly entertained just eating and walking there. It was just so beautiful. But yeah, I love the little towns and smaller destinations throughout Spain. Meera, did you have any hidden gem recommendations in Spain?
Absolutely. I also did spend time in Figliana, and I was like, where am I? Like, am I in the middle of Greece right now or something? I was like, I don't even know how I ended up there. I think I was in Nerja, and someone told me, it's crazy. Like, someone's like, oh, just take this bus up. And I was like, okay, why not? I did not expect that to be the destination, which I think is kind of a general experience for like a lot of these smaller towns in Spain. But in terms of, my hidden gems, Madrid is not a hidden gem, obviously. It's going to be like top 3 on the list. But I would say there are neighborhoods in Madrid that I think a lot of people who are visiting for a day or two don't end up making it to. And I think these are some of just, my favorite places in that city to hang out. So like my top 3 neighborhoods there would be Lavapiés, La Latina, and Embajadores is actually, I didn't know this actually when I was living there, but since then I've been told that it's, voted one of the world's coolest neighborhoods now. Like you said, Sky, you could just walk around and like the activity is just walking and looking. There's so much street art. There's so many like outdoor patio bars. People are just mingling and hanging out in the plazas. And there's always like little markets or, flea market areas going on around there. Like La Latina hosts El Rastro every weekend. And that's just an amazing like spread of a flea market all down the street. And so I think that they're close by. They're close enough to the city center that you can walk them very easily. But I don't think a lot of people make it there. If you're just, quick in and out to Madrid, checking off the major landmarks, you won't spend that time just wandering through these like 3 really close by neighborhoods. And I would highly recommend if you have, more than a day or two, or if you're just looking to get out of the city center crowd, out of Sol and Gran Via, totally, totally worth it. And you don't really need an itinerary for those neighborhoods. You just, like you said, walk and find a great place to eat on the side of the streets or, just sit and people watch. There's always something happening there. So those for sure. I mean, I would return every single time that I'm in Madrid. Other than that, I would say like Costa Brava up past Barcelona has a ton of tiny, small hidden gem beach towns. There's obviously the bigger ones that you'll see like Palamos and Begor and other things like that. But we actually spent a week in Montros up there, which is like really, really tiny right in the middle of it. And it was so quiet and hidden, just like tucked away in the cliffs. The sunsets were unreal. I think they the best that I've seen to this day. And it was truly just such an amazing place to unplug and just be in nature, like the cliffs and like, rocky stone beaches, just with, you and 2 other people maybe on it at 7 a.m. watching the sunset or sunrise. Really amazing experiences. So definitely those 2. And also, the Alhambra in Granada is not a hidden gem as well, but it is not overrated. Like, I feel like I have to say it because it's one of those things that you're like,
Totally.
This is on every single list. Should I actually go? Like, is it actually this amazing of an experience? And for me, it was. Like, the entire city of Granada truly, truly was. And the Alhambra blew me away. The mix of cultures was like nothing I had seen before. So definitely, like, if you see it on the list, if you see it on top 10 lists, it's worth it. Go for sure.
In Barcelona, for me, while like they do have a major tourist attraction, Park Güell in Gracia, the overarching neighborhood of Gracia is so much less touristy and it's more like in the mountains a little bit. So I could see where if you're only there for a week or 2, there could be a little bit of difficulty because you have to make your way down. But if you're interested in more of like the real Barcelona, the real Spain, it's definitely where you're going to find that. But yeah, so it's possible to find these things in big cities. And also Costa Brava is such a good spot to situate yourself because there are so many little towns up that coast. When I was living in Barcelona, that was just a big activity for me. Is every other day, I'm like, okay, what cute town am I going to today? Just to take the train, so easy. Planning a trip to Spain can be a little bit complicated because in terms of countries, especially European countries, it's pretty big. It can be kind of difficult to find your way from one city to the other in terms of it's eating a big part of your trip. So if you only have maybe like a week or two, it can be stressful to think, where am I going to go? There's so many amazing places. What's the best choice? Catherine, where would you suggest someone to go in Spain who has never visited before?
Well, I would say Madrid, of course. I think that that is a must. I'm actually, the internet's going to hate me for this, but I don't feel super connected to Barcelona. So if I had to choose between the two, I would definitely say Madrid. And I think if you just have a short amount of time, definitely try and make a day trip from Madrid somewhere. Like Toledo's really popular. And again, like super touristy, but for good reason, because it's absolutely amazing. Avila, Segovia, all of those are such amazing day trips from Madrid. So it would be nice to definitely do one of those. San Sebastian is one of my top places in Spain as well. So I think I actually really love the north of Spain. And I think San Sebastian is a wonderful place to go if you just have a short time. Their pinchos or tapas scene is one of the best in the world. Like they're famous for their food there, and they've got lots of beautiful beaches, and the city is just really, really, that city is stunning. And then it's kind of on the other side of the country, but Cordoba is a really special place for me as well. I think it's this beautiful little whitewashed historic city. The Mesquita is I think it's probably my favorite of the religious houses of worship. It's a mix of a Catholic cathedral and an Islamic mosque. It's absolutely one of the most stunning sights in Spain, I think. And they just do flowers very well. Like all the little buildings, like all these colorful flower pots are hanging off the buildings. And it's such a joy to stroll around there. It's a really chilled out little city. So I think that's one of my top places in the south of Spain for sure. Don't go in the summer though, because it's like 43 degrees. It's super, super hot. But May and June and the shoulder seasons are really beautiful to visit there. You can go to San Sebastian up north in the summer months and be at the beach.
Yeah, I've heard good things about San Sebastian, especially in the summer. Yeah. It's on my list for sure. Meera, do you have any suggestions for places to visit in Spain for someone who's never visited before?
Definitely. The internet might hate you, Kat, but I agree. I am also ride or die for Madrid. I think it is an absolute must. And I think it's far more than a stopover or far more than like your port of entry or something into the country. It is an incredible, incredible city. It's really a big city that for me has, as I mentioned previously, has a really like local neighborhoody feel that you can get a completely different vibe no matter where you are in the city. So I highly recommend, like 5 days a week, a month, 3 years if you're at some point. Like
a lifetime.
Yeah, exactly. But I actually, if I had to pick north or south of the country, I'm like an Andalusia fan. Like southern part of Spain for me is just an unreal blend of, the North African, Spanish Iberian Peninsula cultures. Like it's such a meeting point, and you can see it so clearly in all of the cities and towns down there. The architecture is so different. The feel of the cities, the food is really amazing because it just blends so many of these like Moroccan spices into the foods. And then they have, like I mentioned, the Alhambra is still standing. And just these testaments to like this entire meeting point of civilizations is really, really cool. And the history of it is fascinating. So Granada for me was just a really special experience and a place that I hope to return many times. I also really loved visiting smaller towns around that, like Nerja was really beautiful, right on the coast as well. And that's actually where I took the bus up to Frigiliana, which was like, just 30 minutes from there or something. So all of those tiny little beach towns in the south are really peaceful. And then we also spent some time down in Malaga as well, which was a beautiful town. Bigger city, so if you want the beach vibe, but also a little bit of a city vibe, that's a really great place. But if you're looking for the smaller towns, then like exploring the towns like Nerja right outside are quieter, more low-key, and you're able to escape some of the crowds a bit more.
Yeah, I love the Andalusia region. I feel like it ends up not getting talked about as much, especially with places like Madrid and Costa Brava and just like other spots that I think, especially for international visitors, they're just more familiar with. I kind of want to get more into experiences that you can have in Spain. We've touched on it a little bit, but one of the ones that I know both of you guys did was the Camino de Santiago. If anyone listening hasn't heard it yet, Kat actually recorded a really amazing podcast all about her time on the Camino de Santiago. Would you mind? I know that you have the whole podcast, and I do think people should listen to that whole podcast about that, but just briefly explaining that sentiment about why you think the Camino is such a special experience in Spain.
Just the whole experience of walking in the silence, just with your own thoughts and with the people that you meet. Like there's something to take away from every experience, whether you're by yourself or with others. And I also think, walking across the country, even if it's just a short, like little 5 days, I think even that is challenging. So it really shows you what you're capable of as well. So I think that's really what changed for me. I mean, it's not easy, walking for 6 hours, 25 kilometers every single day. It just shows you what you're made of and shows you what you can accomplish.
You kind of have to do a lot of introspection when you're doing something like that. Meera, did you have a similar experience where you felt like you walked away from the Camino with more than just the travel experience?
Definitely. I mean, I did a very short one. It was just 5 days and it was very spur of the moment. I was like a week away from leaving the country and I kind of just wrapped up, everything I wanted to do for that trip. So I was like, okay, I got a week. Like, I'll just go do this 5-day trip that everyone's been telling me to do. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And I just did this really short route, which I think if it's something, if anything Kat said has really spoken to you and it's something you want to try, but you're like, I don't know if I can commit a month of my life to that, or I don't know if I can commit even 2 weeks of my life. I think this short 5-day trip is enough for you to get a good taste of it and to understand if it's something you really want to come back and do more of, or if you're like, yeah, that was awesome and I just need 5 days of it. For me, I think it did open up a world that I didn't know because I wouldn't consider myself someone who like plans trips around hikes or, walks or things like that. I do and really enjoy being in nature, but like, I'm like a beachy girl. Like I want to just fly and soak up the sun. So this was something that was totally new for me and that I never would have seen myself like waking up at 4 or 5 a.m. and walking until 1 or 2. Like that was just not something that I thought I could do or that was in me, really. It didn't end up feeling like a task or a chore. It was like exciting. It was really like an adrenaline rush every single day. And you just get to talk to such amazing people. Like I would stay in these giant like hostel halls and like everyone's bed is just right next to each other and you just go out to eat with whoever you walked into the town with at that moment, and they're from all over the world. So I really did learn, like as Kat said, that I was capable of this thing that I was like never saw myself doing, never had planned a trip around something like that before. It really did unlock that in me and it's something I would do again. I've never ever had experienced anything like the Camino, and that was just my 5-day experience. I couldn't imagine what Kat's 5-week trip would do to you. That would be really life-changing.
Yeah, that was another thing that I took away from Kat's podcast is that it can really be anything that you want, and any way you want to do the Camino, you can do it. Another experience that you guys both actually had in Spain was that you taught English in Spain, which I know that teaching English is pretty popular of a way to travel these days to a lot of places. Catherine, can you tell me a little bit about what your day teaching English in Spain would look like?
Oh, yeah. I actually ended up doing that in my 40s. I'm not a trained teacher. I have taken like my English teaching certification because I thought it would be good for my resume and a good way to sort of see the world through that. So when the opportunity to do the Auxiliar de Conversación program in Spain came up, I took that because I'm like, okay, this is my chance to go and live in Spain. Just because being a little bit older, I've aged out of all the youth visas. One program I did, I worked 3 days a week, and then the other one was 5 days a week, but only 23 hours, 24 hours a week I worked. So I had a lot of free time as well. But yeah, I would just basically what it is I was a teaching assistant. So I was not in charge of the classroom, thank goodness, because I think that would be a bit too much for me. So what I would do every day is I would have a schedule of the classes I was to go to. And I assisted in many different types of classes that were taught in English. So my students did English, of course, drama, art, and physical education in English. So I would participate in all of those classes. Why I was put in physical education, I don't know, because that is certainly not my forte. But so I would just assist the students. I would have to speak to them in English and then just assist them with their lessons and their pronunciation. I do speaking activities with them. I think for me, it wasn't so much the act of teaching that I enjoyed, but I loved connecting with my students. I taught in high school 1 year in Zaragoza, and I taught in elementary school in Madrid. And I think just, it was such a privilege to have those kids like come and share things about their lives with me. And, the little ones especially are particularly affectionate. So they would just come and give you a hug and jump all over you. So I highly encourage listeners to do that if they're kind of wanting a little bit of a break from life. It's a fairly easy work.
Yeah. And so for anyone who's listening who might be interested in it, but they don't know how to go about it, you don't need a teaching degree to be able to teach English in Spain, or how does it work?
Well, all you need is a university degree, and it could be in any subject. Mm-hmm. The age limit is quite generous as well. I think you can teach up to when you're 60 years old.
Meera, did you teach English in Spain in a similar way, or could you tell me a little bit of what your day would look like when you were teaching English in Spain?
Yeah, so Kat described it really well. I think the diversity of experiences is also really broad. So I had some friends who taught who were fully in charge of the classroom, like made the lesson plans and everything. Yeah. And that was actually my experience. I was just like, here's your class. And I would spend, hours outside of school making my presentations and things. But for me, I'll say like, I did think that I saw teaching as a career path. So I did it straight out of college, and I had always taught and tutored throughout high school and college. And I was like, okay, I think I see this for myself in the future. And to do that in an international context was just like, icing on the cake. And so that is where I approached the program from. Ended up deciding that it wasn't for me necessarily the teaching aspect of it, but it was a great way. I think that if you kind of want to combine those things, if you're looking at it as something you want to get a taste of in an international context, it's a really good way to just dip your toe into what that feels like. But I had so much fun. At the end of the program of my 3 years, I did decide that teaching wasn't necessarily for me, but I don't regret a day of it. I had an incredible time. I was absolutely blessed with the schools I was placed in. I was given a lot of responsibility in those schools, but my kids were amazing. I got to teach, as Kat mentioned, I got to teach 3-year-olds, I got to teach 18-year-olds, and it was such a wide array of experiences with that. With the little ones, you're just like, oh, the love is just, it's like oozing out of them. They can't get enough of you. I love it so much. And then with my older students, I just got to have really fascinating, they were almost fluent at that point, and they were really looking to pursue degrees in English or travel abroad. And I got to have really interesting and deep conversations with them about their experiences and growing up in Spain, and learn a lot about what that was like for them, where they want to go, what they see themselves doing in the future. I think I got a glimpse into a life in Spain that I would not have otherwise known. And the teachers as well in the programs that I worked in were so welcoming. It was a great way to arrive in a brand new country and kind of have an immediate support system there, because I was straight out of college. I was really nervous. I just kind of was like, this is it, here I go. And to just show up and have people who welcomed me and who checked on me outside of school too, just like, are you settling in well? Do you need things? What can we get you? Help walk you through immigration processes and stuff, which can be really just stressful and anxiety inducing, someone to bounce those things off of. And then to also have the other auxiliaries in the program as well to hang out with. And some of my really good friends in Spain were from the program in different schools that we would meet at orientations, or I actually did the beta program, which is a different English teaching program. Yeah. And I chose that one actually because I was like Madrid or bust, and they only really have placements in Madrid and then 2 other locations outside. So I was like, okay, this has got to be it. And yeah, no regrets. Highly recommend doing that experience for anyone who wants to be in Spain.
Does the teaching English visa in Spain last for 1 year?
Yes. So I've only gone for I've done 2 1-year stints. So my visa has never run out, but you can renew it. Mm-hmm. So you just have to reapply to the program, because generally you can stay in your school for 2 years, which I think is not long enough, especially if you've got really great connections in the school. It'd be nice to just stay for long term, but you can do 2 years, and then you can move schools. So people do that long term, but yeah, financially, I just don't see it as a as viable long term.
Right.
Just because you're not going to get a chance really to save anything. So that's the unfortunate reality about it.
That makes sense. Meera, do you have any pros and cons that you found when you were teaching English in Spain?
Definitely. I'll have to 100% echo Kat on the savings because that is something I really did experience coming straight out of school and not having a ton saved up before. I was teaching private lessons to a lot of students after classes to make extra money. I was teaching English online on like English teaching platforms as well. So although I did have a great amount of extra time, I thoroughly enjoyed my time there. I think returning at a later point in life in which like I am now or will be in a few years would be a completely different experience to have that money saved up. And I think if you're really going to use your weekends to travel to see different areas in Spain, like that is something to really consider how that could drastically change your experience and allow you to have a lot more time and ability to actually enjoy without the stress of like, oh gosh, I still have to pay my rent next month. And, you know, my English teaching paycheck really only covers that and like, you know, an extra grocery run or something like that as well. Or you just have to be willing to live in different situations. You know, I think straight out of school, I didn't mind having multiple roommates. Like that was still something I was used to. I was kind of in that headspace. And so I was able to pay like pretty cheap rent and live with 4 other girls. And then, yeah, like I think my first NIE card, like my identity card, I literally cried the night before. And my picture is like, my eyes are swollen in the card. It's horrible. It's the worst photo I've ever taken. That process takes a toll on you. Like, I don't think I've ever felt worse about myself than when I left the immigration office in Spain. And I was like, I know nothing. Like, why am I here? I felt horrible. It really, it's not an understatement to say that you need a thick skin to go through that process and people are not trying to help you along the way. But like I said, I think the programs itself, you make great relationships with the teachers and the parents of some of your students and people who will help you along that way. But the offices will not, for sure. Like they're there to make your life harder and that's about it. But I think other than that, like another con I would add in would be that the experiences can really, really vary. Like I know Kat and I are sharing excellent experiences here, but school placements vary drastically, workloads vary drastically, responsibilities and, you know, just tasks given to the auxiliaries are really different based on the type of school you're in, the type of classrooms you're in, the age range. You can like preference these things and say, you know, I prefer to work with younger students, I prefer to work with older students, but you really never know what you're going to get until you're assigned that placement. And so I think having some flexibility and just a little bit of like, okay, you know, this might not go exactly the way I'm envisioning it, or I might just have to kind of figure this out as I go is really important because it's pretty rare to get everything that you want, all of your boxes checked. But overall, yes, I mean, I renewed for 3 years. I would have renewed for more if I could have at that moment. Like Kat said, like I needed to go back. I was like, I need a job now.
Yeah, those are really good points. So there's so many places in Spain that you want to visit, and we've talked about a lot of them already, all the places that we love, but there's also maybe some places, depending on who you are and what you're looking for, that you might want to steer clear of. For instance, I know that you guys don't seem like the biggest Barcelona fans in the world. I have like a little bit on the other side of the spectrum. I do appreciate a lot of Barcelona, but I can admit that the party atmosphere, especially in certain neighborhoods, is a lot. It's intense. And when I lived there, I stayed in a neighborhood called Raval. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it is like the heart of the party situation. And I thought I could handle it. I was like, oh, whatever. Like, it's like the cheapest apartments. No, there's a reason that those are the cheapest apartments. You can't walk outside your house without a major party going on, which if you're in the mood for a party is fantastic. But if you're not, it can be horrible. So for me, I would say if you're not into someone who's a heavy partier, maybe even if you want to go to Barcelona, stay away from like Raval and more of like the central neighborhoods where that's all going to be. Stick to the outskirts. Is there any place, Kat, that you recommend avoiding in Spain?
I would say there's anywhere to avoid completely. I would just say, like, speaking from my experience in Madrid, there's just a couple of areas that I would be a little bit more vigilant in. So like anywhere where there's lots of tourists, like pickpocketing is just rampant in Madrid and in Barcelona. I know Barcelona is quite famous for that, but Madrid, like I've never had an experience with anything being stolen there, but most of my friends have. Like pickpocketing is outrageous. So just be really mindful of your belongings in anywhere where there's lots of tourists. So like especially in around Seoul, Grand Via, Plaza Mayor, like those are all real hot spots for pickpockets. And like they also have like people who pose as undercover police and ask for your documents. I know a few friends had experienced being approached by those people, and they're not legitimate police officers. So don't hand over anything to them. I would also just in Madrid as well, I would just say, again, be a little bit more vigilant in Lavapiés neighborhood. Like it's quite central, but still there's a little bit of a higher crime rate. There's a bit, a bit more kind of obvious drug dealing and petty theft in that area. So just, again, that's not an area I felt very comfortable in at night. Like I was fine during the day, but just be a little bit more vigilant.
Yeah, that's good advice. Anytime there's a lot of tourists around, I in my mind I'm like, someone's here trying. They're trying to rob someone. It's not going to be me today.
Totally.
No, Meera, is there anywhere that you would avoid visiting in Spain?
Similar to Kat, like I would never use the word avoid just in the sense that I'm like, go to Spain, go everywhere. But I would agree with Kat in the sense that like you really have to know what kind of traveler you are. I think it's because Spain is such a diverse country and regions are drastically geographically different, food scenes are different, language can be different. I think you really need to know what you're going for in order to get the most out of a trip, because I think it's a really easy country to be overwhelmed by and to end up getting there and being like, there's actually so much to do, and then end up feeling like you did none of the things that you actually want to do. So rather than avoid, I would really just say like, know yourself, know what your to-dos are, what the type of experience you want to do is, and plan your trip around that and kind of ignore the rest, because it's really, really easy to just be like sucked into the country and end up feeling like there's never enough time. And while I agree that's true, I think you can have a really fulfilling experience in any amount of time if you know what you're going for and if you plan for that accordingly. I think actually, the area in which I would use the word avoid is the weather. And I think that is a very, very, like, cannot be stated enough, very important factor in deciding what time of year to avoid certain places. So like the South, this just unbearably hot in the summer. The North can get really, really rainy. When I did the Camino in September, I got rain every single, like I was soaked. I said I had a great experience and I did. We'll never take that back. But wow, like
It was wet.
it was wet. I did not have enough socks for that trip at all, and they do not dry overnight. That's like something I learned very quickly. So those kinds of things can really, I think, impact your trip. And just, you could plan an entire itinerary and then it gets rained out every day. And a lot of the places, might not be air conditioned as much as like at least I'm used to growing up in North America, like where that's something that's a little bit more common. And so I think those are things to keep in mind when you're planning your trip. It's just what you're looking for out of it and what type of year you're going. And I think that will automatically help narrow down a lot of what can feel really overwhelming at first.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So definitely I agree that I think Spain is one of those places. Some places you don't have to be as concerned with the time of year that you're going, but Spain is definitely one of those places that you need to do a lot of research into that. While we're on the topic, I guess, Kat, what do you think is the best time of year to visit Spain?
So I think Madrid is a great year-round destination. Like it doesn't get super cold. It does get cold in the winter. Like it's not definitely not beach weather in the winter in Madrid, but it's sunny all the time. But Madrid does heat up in the summer, so I would kind of avoid Madrid in July and August. Also, a lot of things close in August in Spain. That's their height of their holiday season. So the locals go on holidays then. So you'll find a lot of things shut in August. So that's probably not the best time to go to Spain, because not only is it hot, but nobody is really around. Mm-hmm. So I would say shoulder seasons are perfect. Like May, June, September, October, even into November is lovely weather-wise. Christmas is spectacular in Spain. So if you want to go south and for Christmas, like Malaga is amazing at Christmas time, and it's not, you still get some fairly decent weather. And then, if you do want to go in July and August, hit the north, because the north is a lot cooler. A lot of my friends in Madrid have places that they go in the summer up north just to escape that heat. So I'd say shoulder seasons are ideal everywhere, but for winter time, go south. For summertime, go north. and go Christmas.
Yeah, I was there in Barcelona around Christmas. I was there until like mid-December, but even the first half of December, it was amazing. It was so gorgeous.
amazing.
The markets were
Yeah.
fantastic and the decorations were
The
beautiful.
lights and the decorations.
The lights.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like an underrated gem of a season in Spain. Mira, when do you think is the best time of year to visit Spain?
I would totally echo the shoulder season comment. I think like the April, May time and then the September, October time, depending on the region, because it does get rainy up north, like I just mentioned. It's a really great time to like get the sun, less crowds, and to just you could really it gets really crowded in the summer. So I think you can really enjoy bigger cities and like the more touristy attractions a lot more during those times because it's like shoulder to shoulder. And like we mentioned, you're worrying about pickpockets and what's going on around you all the time. And so going in those shoulder seasons, we have a little bit more room to breathe, makes a big difference to the trip. And the weather is just really, really great around those times. I think something also really important to keep in mind with Spain is that there's always like some kind of festival or event happening somewhere in the country. So either if you have one in mind that you really want to go to, planning for that time of year, or just doing the research about what's going on during the time of year that you do plan your trip to really know what's happening. Like if you are, the world's #1 flamenco fan or something, and you really want to go to La Feria in Sevilla, then you're going to want to plan for that April trip. Like if you want to see Las Fallas in Valencia or like Semana Santa, like the Easter week as well, is such a cool experience. I'd never seen anything like those processions during the Holy Week in Easter that I went to in Cordoba. And like that was really a fascinating and very unique experience for me. And I would have never had that opportunity if I hadn't planned around that week of the year as well. So I think being aware of like what's happening in the different regions and what cities and towns are having, their yearly festivals is really important and could end up getting you some really, really cool experiences that you might not otherwise have if you weren't aware of what's going on at that time of year.
Yeah, looking at the events is really smart. So I visited Spain alone. Kat, I know that you walked the Camino alone. Meera, it sounds like you spent a lot of time in Spain as a woman, probably a good portion of it alone. My next question is about safety. Kat, did you feel safe when you were in Spain?
I did feel really safe in Spain. All my time in Spain has been spent alone. I moved there by myself. And as you mentioned, skywalked the Camino by myself. And I have never had any issues. Really, the only thing has been people approaching me for money or like in areas like Chueca and Malasaña in Madrid. But no harm has ever come to me. Again, like when I'm alone, I'm a little bit more cautious too, but I've never had an issue, but I know a lot of my friends have. And one of my local friends there, she's from Madrid. She said, because of my coloring, I kind of blend in. So people think I'm from there. Like people stop to ask me directions all the time when I'm in Spain. So I think that's definitely something that has been a privilege for me to sort of like blend in. So I've never had any problems there, but I do know friends of mine have come upon some unsettling situations. They stand out a little bit more. And I know one of my friends is super blonde and has had some problems there, like just being approached. So I think that does definitely play a bit of a privileged part in my experiences. Sort of having the dark hair and the olive tone skin and looking like I'm a local.
Yeah, me personally, I also felt pretty safe in Spain. I mean, I also, whenever I'm traveling, try to keep in my mind that even the safest place can be very unsafe. So you really should just like keep a good head on your shoulders. Meera, I know you had a scary experience with a robbery when you were in Madrid. Could you explain that story and what happened and how it kind of shaped your safety views around?
Definitely. As you guys have already said, Spain overall, very safe country that you do have to be aware and vigilant in because there is a lot of things like pickpocketing and petty theft. But I think sometimes they can also, be a little bit more intense than that. So actually my second year there, I did experience like a pretty violent, I would say, robbery while I was walking home. And I was walking home at night. I had at that point been living there for 2 years and it was in my own neighborhood that I knew very well at that point. And I think when you're living in a place, like you will walk home alone at times, like there's just really no way around that. So, I was always very aware of my surroundings and I did feel comfortable. As before this, I had never had any issues, but there was just someone kind of waiting inside like one of those doorways. So I couldn't see it until I walked by it. And after I'd walked by it. They had, pushed me down. Like I scraped my, skin up. My legs were bleeding. I ripped my pants. They like took everything that I had on me, my purse, my phone, all of it. And I will say, like, immediately after that, like a whole group of like Spanish women came over and they were like helping me, walk me home. Like, who can I call for you? All of these things. Like there was like an immediate community there. And 9 out of 10 people I meet in Spain are just so loving and caring and wonderful. And there will always be someone there to pick you up. But that experience was definitely very jarring and shook me up for some time and did kind of like, it was that reminder that like, okay, I've been here for 2 years. This is my third time in the country for an extended period of time. I'm super comfortable. I speak the language very well. And still like, being alert, being cautious, not walking around with like more than you need to have on you in that moment for sure are all things that are like non-negotiables when visiting Spain in order to really have a great experience. And I wouldn't say that, like I wouldn't share that story to just like, scare anyone because I think that you can see from this episode, like it's a wonderful place and I would go back and return in a second, but it is, like I said, it's just a place where being alert is not an option. It is something that you need to always kind of have in the back of your mind, especially if you're living in Madrid in more crowded neighborhoods or more touristy neighborhoods where if you're there for a short amount of time, you probably will be just for the convenience of it. But yeah, I think I'd also add in like I grew up in the US, so like concepts of like racism and colorism and things like that aren't new to me at all and are not new experiences. But they're definitely prevalent in Spain. And as like a traveler of color, I do my research before I go places and kind of just get an idea of what the culture is like there and what people who look like me have had in terms of their experiences. And that's helped me a lot when visiting countries in Europe and in the Mediterranean region. I think it's really helped me to kind of have a thicker skin when I visit because people can be quite direct. I think that's also something that I learned living in Spain is like they really will just come up to your face and say it sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I did have a few experiences like that where I was like, what did you just say to me? Like that's So there are things like that I think like travelers of color, travelers from different backgrounds or darker skins should really be aware of. And that's also to say though that like the Spanish population is really diverse and you'll see people from all shades and all backgrounds.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I think that the safety question is really difficult in general because it's one of the things that travelers want to know the most, like almost one of their first thoughts, I think, is this place safe? But it really is so different on a person-to-person basis. And I think personally, like the best thing you could do is go in with an open mind, but be careful and just don't let your guard down so much that you can get into a sticky situation. But I think you guys both gave a lot of really good advice and feel really comfortable in Spain still. So we touched a little bit on the public transportation, but Catherine, could you give me a little bit more about what do you think are the best ways to get around Spain?
So I love the metro. Barcelona has a metro too, but the metro in Madrid is just I'm so fascinated by it. It's just such an amazing way to get around. And they've got such a wonderful system of buses as well that sort of fills in the blanks, where the metro might leave a bit of a gap. Even living in Zaragoza, like that city is so walkable, like you could walk everywhere, but they have such an impressive bus system for such a small place. But even for traveling, I didn't have a car there. I never rented a car either. So I did all my traveling either by bus. They've got the Elsa bus system is really fantastic. And then all the trains, they've got Cercanías trains, which are like a local train. They've got those all over the country that kind of putter between all the little small towns. They've got the big high-speed AVE trains, which, I went to Valencia for a day from Madrid. Also not recommended because I think it's worth more time, but it's doable. And then you've got like slower regional trains, but you can get anywhere you want to go by bus or train or flying.
I feel like in North America, we don't really understand how cheap they can be over there. Sometimes it's just cheaper to take the flight. Meera, did you also mainly use the public transportation to get around Spain?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, as we've mentioned like multiple times through this episode, and I think growing up in the US, I feel the same way. Like when I see a good public transportation system, I'm like, life-changing. I'm obsessed with this. Like we just don't know it. So I would totally echo the sentiment that Spain's public transportation is really unmatched and really affordable too. Like it's not just like the trains and the buses that can be really affordable, and I would really recommend people take advantage of it. I did rent a car on a few different occasions when we did like longer road trips and things. I don't think it's necessary at all. It was an affordable process. If you plan out your trip a little bit more in advance, of course, if you like book up to the last minute, it can get a little bit pricey, but we always had really affordable rentals. No issues renting them, no issues returning them. The roads were really easy to navigate. The signs were easy. So I would say if that's something that you're interested in doing, and I know you already did, Sky, like it's not a huge barrier to get past either.
It really wasn't that difficult to rent a car out there, and the roads were pretty easy to figure out. But I do think it's one of those things that it's really not a necessity. And unless you're someone who's like, I have to go on a road trip or I have to have that specific experience, then you probably don't need to, and you can just structure it around taking the public transportation. So one of the things that I think everyone thinks of when they're thinking of Spain is the food. The culinary scene there is just amazing. You could say that about a lot of places in Europe, but I think Spain's culinary scene is very, very special. Catherine, do you have any must-try foods in Spain that you would recommend to visitors?
Yeah, I think probably a lot of our recommendations are going to overlap. So croquetas are real favorites of everybody's in Spain. But in Cordoba, I love a soup called the salmorejo, and that it's kind of like a gazpacho, except it's a little bit thicker, and they throw some ham and bread in there, and it's a cold soup as well, and it's absolutely delicious. So that's a must try if you're down south. I also like cachopo, which is a dish from Asturias. It's from up north, and it's perfect if you're walking the Camino because it's really hearty. It's like a breaded pork cutlet wrapped in ham with cheese. It's like a heart attack on a plate for sure. But and it's really big, but it's really, really delicious. And then on the Camino, I really fell in love with pimentos de padron. So the grilled green peppers, those are absolutely amazing. And they covered in a little bit of salt, and then you have to hunt for it. It's always kind of fun to hunt for the spicy one in the big plate of the peppers. And then I really like the prawns there. The prawns in Spain. Some of the seafood I'm not quite sure about, but the prawns are amazing in Spain. Like they do it in a beautiful garlic butter, and those are really delicious. And then of course cafe con leche. It's like my favorite thing. I'm not a coffee drinker, but there it's like I have like 3 cafe con leches a day. I love it. And they do the most beautiful fresh squeezed orange juice. So everywhere you go, and even in my school, they had a juicing machine. So I miss the fresh squeezed orange juice. It's really one of my favorite.
A perfect way to start the day
to drink there. Yeah, it's wonderful. So those are some of my favorites, but of course the list is really long.
Okay.
You guys will add to it nicely.
Meera, do you have any favorite foods to try in Spain for visitors?
Definitely. So I had a bit of an interesting experience because it's a really, as Kat just mentioned, like meat heavy cuisine, and I was actually vegetarian my entire time I was there. So at first I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if this is going to really go over well for me, but I was absolutely like blown away at how many options I had, how vegetarian friendly and vegan friendly the bigger cities are. I think the one thing I struggled to find was like non-dairy milk, and like you will just not, it's not a thing in like more of like the local places. But while I was living in Madrid, like I wanted for nothing. There were so many options open to me. I love a good like veggie paella. Just, oh my gosh, amazing. Like a weekend, that is my favorite way to spend a Saturday afternoon. The tortillas are crazy. Like I think the big debate is like with or without the onion. I always do with the onion. That's just like, yeah, like a gooey, oozy tortilla with onion in it. Oh my gosh, so good. So amazing. Like the potatoes, the patatas bravas, which of course you can add the meat to, but you can add like, I always did mine with like truffle or something on top. That was crazy. So there's a ton of options, no matter like what kind of dietary or like palate you're going into Spain with. I think you'll find something for yourself. Also, like, the drink scene is really amazing too. Like a good sangria, of course, is a classic, but vermouth is a really popular drink in Madrid as well. And that was something that was like always a frequent part of our tapas crawls on the weekend. And then I was also introduced to like a more local drink, which is actually from the north of Spain, but it's called like a calimocho, which is just, red wine and Coca-Cola mixed together. And like, I did not have like a large budget when I was there, so it was really cheap drink and it was really easy to get your hands on, and it was very good. So I was like, okay, this is my scene, like a tortilla and a calimocho on the weekend is like just up my alley. But it was, yeah, like I said, I think no matter what angle you're coming at the food scene from, if you're there for the meat, the seafood, or if you're like more into the veggie options or something, you'll find plenty for yourself.
Yeah, very diverse food scene. I loved everything that you guys have mentioned, but one of my favorites, specifically because it's my favorite dessert, is creme brulee. The crema catalana in Barcelona area, Costa Brava, is so good and just like the perfect way to end a meal. And also just, I think if you're not really sure what you want, it can kind of be a little bit intimidating to go into a restaurant, especially if you're not familiar with a lot of the local specialties. If you go to like one of the local markets or do like a market tour, like you were mentioning, Meera, the food tours, I think the market tours can be really fun because it's all in one location. That can be a great way to try a bunch of the little snacky items without doing like a whole sit down meal. And you can get a lot of really great recommendations that way too. So Spain can be very different from North America and a lot of its little quirks and ways of life. Is there any Spain etiquette that visitors should be aware of before they go? Kat, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think especially as a Canadian, we don't really touch or show affection. I think one of the things that surprised me the most is like how they kiss each other on both cheeks. So strangers aren't going to typically do that to you, but even anybody that you are friends with or friends of friends, like anyone you're meeting kind of socially, they will kiss on both cheeks. I actually really like that. I thought that was, by the end of it, I thought that was really, really nice. So don't be surprised if that happens to you. That's one thing to sort of be aware of. Another thing is like there are so many wonderful churches and cathedrals to visit in Spain, and to just always pack something a little bit more modest to wear in those places. Like that's quite important, just from a reverence and respect perspectives. Just cover up, no shorts, no bikini tops, especially in the South, right? You're probably going to be wearing little tank tops because of the heat. So I think that is just something to be aware of as well. And then also tipping is not as automatic as it is here in North America. Like my Spanish friends don't tip anywhere. I don't tip at the hairdresser. I don't tip at the taxis, anything like that. So just, what I would just normally do is just leave €1 or round up to the nearest euro. If the service was exceptional. Like nobody expects it there. It's not even on, like a tip isn't even on the machine. So that's something else to be aware of. And then finally, like in places like Madrid and Barcelona and in the high tourist areas, you will encounter service staff who speak English. And that's sometimes really nice when you're having a problem. But in some of the smaller cities and towns, like you're not going to get that automatic conversation in English. So just be prepared with a little bit of the language, just for at least your basic manners, if nothing else, because you're not always going to find English spoken in the smaller places.
I think that's really smart. I mean, I always try to learn a few phrases of the places that I'm visiting just as a general respect thing. Meera, is there any Spain etiquette that visitors should be aware of before a trip to the country?
Yeah, I think something that really struck me is just like how direct of a culture it is, which is really amazing in the sense that like you can strike up conversation with anyone, like the cashier will just talk to you. But yeah, there were certain things that I was like, oh, okay. Like, sometimes I would just be tired or something. I'd like walk into school and my kids would just be like, what's wrong with your face? And I'm like, this is just my face today. Like, I don't know. It just is the way it is. Like, and it really wasn't even just things that like happened in school. Of course, those are like with my students who are more comfortable with me. But like, there are just times where I was like, okay, like we're just, saying what's on our mind right now. And that's fine. Yeah. So that was a bit of a shock, I think, from growing up in the US where people are a little bit more like aware of like, okay, like how do I approach you really politely and stuff like that. Just like not necessarily as important as a concept there, but I had some really funny and like, good hilarious memories from that as well that I take with me. So there was that. I think also for me, like, and I think a lot of people who are coming from North America where we're a very like time-oriented culture, things happen on time and you arrive on time and it's considered rude if you're not, or like you're showing up 10, 20 minutes late. That's just not the way Spanish clocks function at all. Time is very relative, even from like something as casual as a meeting with friends to like things like, we were talking about immigration earlier, like my immigration appointments, like it didn't matter if you had an appointment or anything like that. Like you're there until someone is ready to talk to you, essentially. I think my Spanish roommate, like the first thing she said to me when we were like going grocery, we had just, moved in that week. We were just going grocery shopping together. She's like, you walk really fast. And I was like, you're right. Like I was living in DC for 4 years before that. And I was like sprinting down the street. And I didn't even realize like how, my pace was just like 3 times more than like the average local there. So the country really forced me to slow down, like physically, but also just like the way I approach things and, things that would usually like take me off back home. And there's really like beautiful things to that in the sense that you can sit at a cafe for hours and no one's going to like slap a bill on your table like they would at home and be like, you're either ordering something or you're leaving. It's really encouraged to just like hang and chat. And if you're finished the meal, it's like, you hang out till you hang out. Like nobody is pushing you out the door. And I really, really loved that. And I think coming from the culture that I grew up in the city I was living in, that was a stark difference. And definitely, I think a positive that I took away from the country and that I try to incorporate more into my life now.
Yeah, I definitely noticed a huge difference. It's in like the dining etiquette from the US, because in the US, a waiter will come over to your table like 6 to 7 times while you're eating and be like, everything good, all good, which I actually hate. I can't stand that. I'm like, yeah, it's as it was 5 minutes ago. It's still good. But in Spain, it actually took me a minute to figure out what was going on, because I would be like, okay, my plates are clear. We've been sitting here for like an hour since the plates are clear and nobody's coming over to me like, do you want your bill? And then it dawned upon me eventually that no, I have to ask for the bill, because it seemed like to me that they thought that it would be rude to be like, okay, you want your bill now? Like it's time to go. And it's just 2 very different perspectives on eating and like dining out of restaurants. But I think it's funny because to Americans, I feel like they could think the other way is rude and like vice versa.
Yes.
Okay, so we're getting to the end of the episode here. Just to wrap up, Catherine, what is the ultimate reason that you believe travelers should visit Spain?
For me, my favorite thing is just the history and the architecture and the art. So I think culturally, it's such a rich history, and it's gone through so many different incarnations over the centuries. So I think if you are a culture buff, I think that is absolutely the main reason to go to Spain. You'll be absolutely blown away by the architecture and all the layers of history, and the art is definitely some of the best in the world. So I think that is that's my number one reason for going.
Beautiful. Meera, what do you think is the ultimate reason that travelers should visit Spain?
I think, and we kind of just touched on this in the etiquette section, but for me personally, Spain really challenged a lot of my perspective and my priorities. Like I was always really a go type of person and still struggle with that. But Spain, Spanish culture, the Spanish friends that I made there, they really forced me to slow down a lot and just, like I said, like walk slower down the street, sit longer in a cafe that you're sitting at or just having a coffee at, and just really take every day, like day by day. I think some of my best memories and experiences have come from just waking up and like, what do I do today? Let's go walk down the street and find out what's going on in the neighborhood or something like that. And that just really was it was very much the opposite of like how I grew up and what I was living in, and just the way that I approached my daily life before my 3-year stint there. And I think that continues to shape me today. And it really just forced me to view the world a lot differently. And I'm very, very grateful for that. It has truly changed a lot about me and my personality. And I think anyone who's there for any amount of time, even if it's just for a week, like we said, like you're going to feel that. And I think that you take away a lot of really valuable lessons from experiencing that different of a culture. I also say that the country is just really, really diverse. Like it doesn't matter what type of traveler you are. If you're like Kat said, if you're there for the art, if you're there for the food, if you're there for the architecture, or like the dance, the music, or you're just there to party, like hang out and have fun. There is truly something that could pack an itinerary for anyone. Like you just name your niche interest and there's like 30 things that come to the top of mind of like what you could do to fill that itinerary in Spain and where you could go. So it's for everybody. It's truly a country that has something for everyone.
Yeah, the diversity is definitely a big factor for me there too. I just think that even not just on a person-to-person basis, but as an individual, if I want to go one time and have a beach vacation, you could do that in Spain. If you want to go one time and walk the Camino, you can do that. Or if you just want to go and enjoy a city environment, like that's possible as well. Of course, the culinary scene is amazing, but I also just found Spain to be a very welcoming place. I felt very comfortable there every time I visited. And I think it's something that you really get and understand once you've been there. And if anyone is at home listening right now and you want even more information and recommendations about Spain, be sure to check out all of our Spain guides on Travel Living. There's so many and there's a lot of juicy info in there. I think all of us have done some of the Spain travel guides by now. So you can read all of our guides on there. Meera and Kat, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been such a pleasure. And thank you to everyone listening to this episode of the Travel Lemming podcast.